I always thought my mother loved us the same, but that night, I heard her whisper my brother's name, and my stomach turned cold. I'm Emily Carter, a children's nurse from Ohio. I've spent my life healing others, but now I need to learn how to heal myself after the woman who raised me stole my future. The whisper behind the door. There are nights when my feet ache so much that every step feels like I'm walking through thick mud. But this night was different. I'd swapped my navy scrubs for old sneakers, left my hospital badge in my locker, and driven home with my window cracked open. A cool wind rushed over my face, and a strange unease tugged at my chest the whole way. I pulled into our driveway earlier than usual because my shift was cut short by a storm warning. The neighborhood was silent, and the faint hum of my car seemed louder than ever. I stepped out, my body tired but my senses sharp, maybe because I felt something ahead waiting for me. As I walked toward the house, I noticed the front porch light was off. My mom never forgot things like that. I crept up the steps, careful not to make much noise. The curtains in the kitchen window were drawn, and through the thin gap I saw shadows moving. Inside, I closed the door softly and put my bag down, listening. Then I heard it. My mother's voice, lower than usual, almost like a whisper. I heard her say my brother's name. She hadn't noticed me coming in. My heart began to beat faster. I tiptoed down the hallway, pausing at the kitchen door. I pressed my ear against it. The room smelled of chamomile tea and lemon loaf, sweet but sickly. "He'll never know," Mom said quietly. "Your inheritance, William. We'll make sure you're safe." The word hit me like a slap. Inheritance. My breath stopped. Why was she talking about my inheritance to him in secret? I wanted to burst in, demand answers, but I couldn't move. I kept listening, every muscle tense. "Emily doesn't need to worry about this," Mom said, her voice shaking a little. My name spoken like I wasn't even there. I felt cold all over. Shadows stretched across the kitchen floor, and I waited, scared of what I'd hear next. A signature I never gave. I hardly slept that night. My brain kept twisting around those words. Inheritance. He'll never know. Safe. Morning came with a dull gray light leaking through my window. I lay there thinking about my dad and how he used to leave little notes in my lunchbox, always reminding me to stand tall. Now I felt so small. At breakfast, Mom tried to act normal. She poured coffee and gave me a hurried smile. Her hands shook when she reached for the sugar. William mumbled a hello and rushed off, leaving half his toast behind. After they left for work, I searched the house like I was looking for a lost part of myself. My dad's desk was covered in old bills and crossword puzzles. The top drawer stuck a little, just like it always did. I tugged it open and found a manila envelope resting underneath checkbooks. Last will and testament was printed at the top. I pulled the pages out. My hands trembled too. My name was there, typed bold and clear. Under it, though, a single line had been crossed out. Not scribbled, but neatly, slowly, like someone cared too much. Next to it, in Mom's tight, careful handwriting, she'd written William's name. I blinked, convinced it was a mistake. I ran my finger over the ink. It felt new. My signature was missing, replaced by one that looked almost like mine, but not quite. My stomach twisted. Why would Mom do this? Dad always said he trusted her, that she'd look after us if anything happened, but this wasn't looking after. This was stealing. The air in the room started to feel heavy. I wanted to believe it was just a simple error, a mix-up, but the way my name was erased, how perfect William's name looked underneath, it felt deliberate. I sank into Dad's old chair, clutching the papers, wanting to cry but too numb. I stared at Mom's signature and wondered if she ever felt guilty signing away my future. For the first time, I wished my dad was still here to help me understand why my own mother could cut me out with a pen. The lie at breakfast. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen watching Mom crack eggs into a pan. The sizzle sounded louder than normal. Sunlight slid across the counter, but everything felt cold and sharp. I cleared my throat, trying to steady myself. "Mom, where are Dad's papers?" I asked, keeping my tone as casual as possible. She didn't look at me at first, just stirred the eggs until they were dry and crumbly. Then she turned, her smile stretched too wide. Her eyes were rimmed red. "You know, everything's in its place," she said, almost singing it. "No need to worry so much, Em." I looked at William, hoping he'd meet my gaze and silently tell me everything was fine. Instead, he pushed his breakfast away and started scrolling on his phone. Guilt seemed to hang around his shoulders. But maybe that was just me wanting him to feel something. "Dad always said I should know where the important stuff was," I continued. My voice shook. just in case. Mom's smile faded. Emily, some things are private. You don't need to dig around. Trust family, that's what your father wanted. She put the plate down in front of me with a sharp clatter. Eat before it gets cold. Her words felt like a slap. Trust family. How could she say that with those lies sitting in her drawer? I watched the yolk run across the plate, golden and sticky, and pressed my lips together to keep from saying what I really thought. William finally looked up, his expression tight, eyes darting from me to Mom and back. Everything about breakfast felt fake, the food, the smiles, even the sun on the counter. I waited for someone to break, for William to say something, or for Mom to confess it was all a misunderstanding, but no one did. I pushed my food away and stood up, my chair scraping across the tile floor. Thanks, I'm not hungry. I left the kitchen, my heart pounding, and pressed my back against the hallway wall. The house that was always filled with warmth now seemed full of shadows and secrets, and I wanted to scream. The lawyer's eyes, I spent most of that morning pacing my room, staring at the will I'd found. The words blurred and sharpened over and over. I needed answers, real ones. So I grabbed my purse and drove straight to Mr. Sanderson's office. He was my dad's lawyer, always gentle with his words and honest with his eyes. The drive felt longer than ever, my hands tight on the steering wheel, and my thoughts tumbling like stones. When I walked in, I tried to sound calm. Mr. Sanderson, I said, holding out the envelope. I found these in my dad's desk. Can you look at them? My voice cracked on the last word. He nodded and motioned for me to sit. He put on his reading glasses and started examining each page. I watched his face closely, looking for every small muscle twitch or frown. He paused halfway through, eyebrows rising. Emily, these signatures, he began, then pulled out the will I'd remembered from years before. He laid them side by side, pointing to the slanted loops and extra flourishes. These signatures don't match, he said softly. The finality in his voice felt like the ground dropping out from under me. Your signature... Here, this one looks off. Even the handwriting seems different. I gripped the chair, my heart beat loud in my ears. What does that mean? I whispered. It means someone forged your name, he said. This isn't legal, Emily. You didn't sign this, did you? I shook my head, feeling my throat squeeze tight, tears stung behind my eyes. Mr. Sanderson slid the papers back toward me. If you want to contest this, you have every right. Let's take this the right way. The room felt too bright, and I stared at the walls covered in old diplomas and family photos. I wondered if any of those people had ever felt this kind of betrayal. My hands started to shake, just like Mom's did at breakfast, but mine shook with anger instead of guilt. That's when I knew. The fight for truth had begun. I wasn't going to let my mother erase me from my own future. I left his office feeling scared, but for the first time, I felt something else too. Hope, sharp and dangerous. My brother's confession, the night after the lawyer's visit, my phone rang just as I was about to crawl into bed. It was William. I didn't want to answer, didn't want to hear anything from him after the way he avoided me at breakfast, but something inside me said I should. When I opened the door, he stumbled in like he'd been drinking for hours. His eyes looked glassy and tired, and his words spilled out fast and slurred. Mom told me, said it's for the best, he said, his voice cracking. She said you never deserved the money. Said Dad's money should stay with someone stable. I stepped back, trying to keep my voice steady. What are you talking about? He swayed against the kitchen counter. That inheritance. She said you blew your chances long ago, said I'm the one who's supposed to have it. I felt a mix of anger and sadness unravel inside me. And you believe her? You think I don't deserve what's rightfully mine? He looked up, shame and desperation in his eyes. I don't want to lie to you, Em, but I'm scared. She said if you find out, everything could fall apart. I clenched my fists. I'm not scared of the truth, William, but I'm done being kept in the dark. He moved closer, his voice barely a whisper. Please, Em, don't tell anyone, not yet. I don't want to lose what little family we have. I shook my head hard, feeling tears blur my vision. I have to tell William, because I won't let Mom steal my life. Without another word, I turned and closed the door on him. My chest burned with betrayal, but beneath it, a cold resolve grew. If my own brother could be part of this lie, then I had to be ready for whatever came next. I knew this was just the beginning. The old box in the attic. The next morning, I waited until Mom and William had left for work. My hands shook as I unlocked the front door, the silence inside prickly and tense. Shadows clung to the corners. I moved slowly up the stairs, every step heavy with worry and want. There was only one place I hadn't checked: the attic, untouched since Dad passed away. The attic door squeaked. Dust danced in the weak sunlight that filtered through the cracked window. I coughed, covering my mouth with my sleeve, then peered around. Boxes were stacked in crooked rows, old photo albums, Christmas decorations, forgotten toys. My heart hammered as I searched for anything that might prove what Mom and William had done. Minutes stretched into an hour. Finally, buried deep behind a box of Dad's bowling trophies, I found a small wooden chest. The knob was loose, and the lid creaked open as I lifted it. Inside, wrapped in a faded scarf, lay a folder marked with Dad's handwriting, for Emily. My breath stuttered. I pulled out the papers. The original will, signed and dated with my name clear and untouched. My fingers shook as I snapped a picture with my phone. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might shake the dust loose from the beams. Looking closer, I found a photo of Dad and me at my kindergarten graduation, both of us grinning. I wanted to cry. He'd trusted I would find this if I ever needed it, like he believed in me even from beyond. The attic suddenly didn't feel so dark. I felt strong, armed with the truth, at last. I clutched the folder and raced downstairs, nearly slipping on the last step. Before leaving, I snapped the attic door shut and ran my hand over the scarf. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope stirring inside me, a way to fight back, to finally force the truth into the light. I knew what I had to do next. I headed out, armed with proof, ready for whatever storm would come. Her ridge over tea. I waited until Mom was alone in the kitchen. The afternoon sunlight spilled across the table, but all I felt was dread. My hands sweated as I brought out Dad's real will and the picture I took. My voice was quiet but strong. "You lied to me," I said, placing the folder on the table. Mom's face turned pale as she looked at the photo. The mug in her hand slipped and shattered on the floor, tea pooling over the tile. For a moment, she was silent, staring at me like I was a stranger, not her daughter. Her lips trembled. "Emily, you were always your father's favorite. I did this for William. He's weak, you know that. I thought I was helping." Her words carved a new wound inside me. Dad's memory was all I had, and now even that was being twisted. "You weren't helping anyone," I said, voice breaking. "You stole from me. You stole the truth." Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing except a deep, cold anger. I remembered every time she hugged me, every time she called me her strong girl. Was it all a lie? Was I just someone she could erase if she thought I didn't need her? She sobbed, saying, "I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was doing what was best for the family." I picked up the folder. "You broke us, Mom. You broke me." I didn't wait for her to argue. Didn't try to comfort her. I turned and walked to my room, packed a small bag, and left the house before she could say anything else. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my cheeks and I knew I couldn't undo what had been done. I walked away with each step heavier than the last, knowing that the hardest part wasn't losing my inheritance. It was losing my mother, the courtroom truth. The courthouse was colder than I expected, with its marble floors and echoing footsteps. I sat across from Mom, unable to meet her eyes, the folder with Dad's real will heavy in my lap. My hands shook a little, but I forced myself to breathe slowly. Mr. Sanderson stood by my side, steady and focused. William sat behind Mom, his head down, fists balled in his lap. The judge entered, and everyone rose, a ritual that felt strange and important. I listened as my lawyer explained what happened: the forged will, my missing signature, the hidden documents in the attic. He showed the judge the originals, passing them across the bench. I risked a glance at Mom. She looked as small as I felt on the inside. Her face was tight, her hands trembling so violently she had to grip her purse to keep them still. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. "Mrs. Carter, these papers are not legal. The evidence shows your daughter was cut out without consent. The inheritance must be restored according to the original will." I felt my body tense even more as the verdict was read. William refused to look at me, his jaw locked, cheeks red. I waited for Mom to break down, to sob, but she just sat rigid and silent. The moment felt like both victory and defeat. I'd fought for the truth, and won, but it came at the cost of my family. I told myself this was justice, but justice sometimes felt cruel. After the hearing, I walked past my mother without a word, the folder pressed close to my chest. Outside, the sun was bright and warm, but I shivered anyway. It was over. The fight, the lies, the pain of not knowing. Yet part of me mourned what I'd lost. The trust, the hope, the comfort of family that was never coming back. Justice didn't heal every wound, but it did draw a line under the past, and I had to try to move forward, the house that wasn't home. The house felt like an empty shell as I unlocked the door and stepped inside with the inheritance finally in my name. Every room echoed with old memories, Dad's laughter in the den, Mom humming in the kitchen, William chasing me through the hallway. Now the air was heavy with sadness, and all I heard was the faint ticking of the living room clock. I went straight to Dad's study, my footsteps soft on the worn rug. I opened the curtains wide, letting sunlight flood the room for the first time in weeks. Dust floated in the golden beams, swirling like tiny ghosts. The bookshelves still held Dad's mysteries and medical textbooks, the ones he used when he taught me about first aid. I ran my hands over their spines, remembering how proud he was. On the desk, I spread out the forged papers Mom had used to cheat me. Each sheet was a reminder of what she'd done, of how family can turn into strangers over money and pride. The angry scribbles, the fake signature, all of it burned in my hands. I lit a fire in the fireplace, watching the flames catch slowly at first, then grow. I fed the papers one by one into the heat, watching them curl to black, then crumble to ash. The smell of smoke filled the room, bitter and final. I felt something loosen in my chest, a chain breaking maybe. When the last slip of paper was gone, I opened a window and let the cold air rush in. I walked through the house, cleaning Dad's desk, dusting the shelves, trying to chase away the shadows. I kept some photos, put others in a box for William. For Mom, I left a single note. Goodbye. The house was no longer home, but it was mine. Not because of the inheritance, but because I'd faced the truth and survived. The ashes in the fireplace told their story, one of betrayal, pain, and finally, letting go. I locked up, pressing my palm to the door, and left for the last time. There was nothing left to save. Healing, on my own terms, and I moved to a new city with a small suitcase and nothing but a fresh start in mind. The apartment was tiny but bright, with big windows that let in the morning sun. There were no family photos on the walls, no reminders of the past I was trying to outrun. It felt strange at first, the silence stretching around me like a wide, empty sky. Some nights, I still dream of that night in the kitchen, the whispered plans, the broken promises. It haunts me, but it also reminds me what I survived. Some love doesn't survive the truth. It's fragile, like glass, and sometimes it shatters when you least expect it. But I'm learning to piece myself back together. Cooking my own meals, making new friends, and even laughing at silly jokes feels like small victories. I'm healing on my own terms, not by forgetting what happened, but by owning it and moving forward. Money, trust, family, they're complicated. I thought having Dad's inheritance would fix everything, but it's not what I needed to feel whole again. What I needed was to set boundaries, to stand up for myself, and to realize that some wounds need time to heal. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and I see strength growing where pain once lived. I'm no longer just Dad's daughter or Mom's betrayed child. I'm Emily, finally free to write my own story, and for that, I am grateful.